Hello, everyone. This is the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast. If this is your first time here, this is a podcast about political commentary, a sprinkling of philosophy, organizing psychology, and revolutionary thinking. My name is Forias, and this is my co-host, Mr. E. So, Mr. E, how are you going today?
I am very well, Forias. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm going pretty good, and I believe this is the first podcast where you've got your new digs behind you.
Yes, yeah, that's true. I've got my new streamer set up, man. You can see Kevin Rudd and Murdoch in the background. I've got my union poster, the old mask. Okay, I've got a unicorn just waiting for a venture capitalist to come invest. Then we're going to be off. Next $1 billion industry, hey? The Revolutionary Think Tank podcast.
And then next you know it, you would have joined the network, say, as state in, was it Prospera or Praxis?
No, Praxis. Yeah, I might go Greenland. Hey? With all the talk about Greenland, let's go Greenland for us.
Okay, and thank you for prompting the discussion for today, Mr. E, because I thought it would be a good idea to discuss all of the geopolitics that have happened this year, because, oh my God, has a lot happened.
All 2 weeks of this year.
Yeah, and just for the record, we're recording this on the 15th of the 1st, and for all we know, by the end of the month, the USA has taken over Greenland, they've taken over Cuba, they've taken over Mexico, who knows? But yeah,
Do you want the list? Do you want the list?
Okay.
Venezuela, Greenland, Iran. Well, they'll just strike Iran. They won't take over Iran, but they'll take over Greenland. They'll take over Venezuela. They'll take over Mexico. That's on the list as well.
Right.
And Canada.
Oh, yes.
Those are my picks. Those are my picks for actual US takeover. Invasion, yeah, Iran for sure. That's just that's obvious as. But actual claim territory.
Right.
Greenland, Canada in the north, Mexico, Venezuela in the south. Venezuela they can keep as a kind of proxy, but definitely Mexico, I reckon. It's the signs are there, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, but actually, well, look, I was happy to kind of jump around the various topics, because really this, actually, I guess this is a Kareem line, but the conversation can go in multiple directions here. But sorry, Kareem, that was a bit of a dig at you, mate. But I genuinely feel that is the case here. There's so many topics we could cover. You could throw a dart at this very large topic board and you can find some pretty good ground to cover. But hey, here's a question for you, because I think you've speculated this in streams. What, in your professional opinion, Mr. E, who do you think is the likely next target, if there is a next target?
So, of just general U.S. aggression, or are we talking about actual takeover stuff here?
Okay, why not do both? What do you think is the most likely general aggression, and who do you think they're most likely to take over?
Okay, yeah. It's so funny how we're speaking in these terms now. It was not that overt before, but it's just hey, no. It's 2026. Who's America going to attack next? Come on.
Well, before you even answer that, I think we have to. There's an elephant to the room here, because I guess you could claim that what I'm about to say is a little conspiracy-esque, but in this timeline that we have to keep in consideration, and we're not going to cover this in the podcast today, but at the end of 2025, they released sections of the Epstein files, and they did a bad job redacting them, so people were able to unredact them, and it revealed a lot of information. And don't you think it's very politically convenient that Venezuela was taken over at the very start of January? It's almost as if someone nudged the U.S. military and was like, "Hey, I need a distraction. You mind you doing me a solid?"
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it was very much the case. I like you constantly see it. Like there's always a couple of smartasses in a good comment section that are just like just a distraction for the Epstein files, and like it was beautiful timing because over the break or that end of year period, like we were kind of just left with the Epstein files to mull on.
Yeah.
And like, people were going to have some questions in the new year. And then lo and behold, Venezuela goes down and that's all that people could talk about like straight off the bat. And then a series of other unfortunate events has just taken the limelight and Epstein's off the radar again, even though it comes back and haunts the American bourgeoisie, the billionaire class. But yes, back to your original question, who is subject first to America's unilateral action as the world police? Well, like if you go off the betting agencies that we have been viewing and watching in the stream, I think it's Polymarket. They bet on world affairs and geopolitics. And, like all the speculation at the moment is Iran is going to be attacked. By the time this is released, it may be the case for IS that Iran has been struck again by the US under this second term of Donald Trump. And so, like as of when we are filming right now, the speculation from, European analysts supposedly is that within 24 hours, there's going to be a strike in Iran. Then like the Americans or Donald Trump or the Trump administration have been ordering certain US bases in the Middle East region to kind of get out certain levels of personnel. They're removing people from the bases because the Iranians have already stated quite clearly that if the US strikes them in response to any of the stuff that's going on in Iran at the moment, they will retaliate, and they have the capabilities. They definitely have the capabilities. This is not a situation where like, they're like Gazans throwing rocks at like Israeli settlers or something like that. They have full capabilities in order to strike back at not just Israel, but American bases as well. They already did that when the US decided to take out their nuclear facilities last year. I think it was the middle of the year. Iran retaliated and they hit the base in Qatar. But it was like one of the most polite gestures I've ever seen in warfare. They kind of warned America first. Trump was like, "Thank you for letting us know," and they struck the base anyway. They retaliated and hit the base. But like everyone was like, "Oh, thank you so much for letting me know. Oh, that's okay. Just don't strike our nuclear facilities again." And everyone walked away. It was absolutely mental. But this time, not so diplomatic for IS.
Yeah,
not so diplomatic.
Well, especially like viewing the I don't know if it was senators, the parliamentarians in the Iran parliament, where like you could see them going like, "Oh," and like I don't know if it was the speaker saying in the back is like, "Hey, if America tries anything, Israel and your bases are next. Like we'll go straight after them." And in no uncertain terms, they were happy to. They'll be like, "Hey, if you take advantage of this civil unrest we're experiencing right now, we'll very happy to have a go at you back." And
civil unrest even. Like, look, I'm sure there are grounds for civil unrest. There's protests that have been happening. We've been researching it for IS. There has been economic dire straits in Iran. Now, people, like, it would seem those that, like, get completely, completely drink the Kool-Aid from the mainstream media on this one are just like, oh, the economic situation has just fallen out of the sky. They just suck at managing their economy. And it's like, hello, the US has put sanctions on them and it has crippled their economy. Like every time the US does this to an adversary or a country that doesn't play ball, they put sanctions on them. They did it with Venezuela. Venezuela has been crippled for 2 decades. And they're just like, see, they can't manage their economy. That's why there's another reason they deserve to go down. Iran, same thing. They've been crippled by sanctions. Hey, look, they can't manage their economy. They deserve to go down. Now, the protest started on the 28th of December last year. And they've been going for a couple of weeks, but they started because people in Iran were pissed off at the economy. They were upset with the government for not managing the economy. The rial crumbled. It just like it absolutely nosedived, and like inflation was going out of control, and like people are worried about being able to afford not only food, but like, you know, a place to live. Like their economic security is on the line here, and so people were legitimately protesting about that. And I remember someone asked me about that after like the first 2 days, and I was like, yeah, well, like, what do you expect? Like, people all around the world are protesting for the same stuff at the moment: economic insecurity. People are pissed off at their governments because things aren't working. Now, if they've been going for 2 weeks and not without a little bit of assistance for IS. Like, who can actually just maintain protesting for 2 weeks when you're struggling? Hey, maybe a bunch of Mossad agents, eh? Could I just say?
And I mentioned this in stream before, but I actually live in the city here in Sydney, and at least the local protests that happened with Iran, well, they were here at the town hall, and I happened to look out my window when they were happening, and there was a very curious thing that happened. Look, at certain points there was them, like, with the speeches, they were waving the Iranian flag, but then I looked outside at one of the times, and this might have been like an hour or so in, and I don't know whether this was just like a rogue person that ran up there. They were up there for way longer than they should have, but then a person had run up with an Israeli flag and was just like waving it there, whilst, you know, I think they must have been singing like a song or something. And I went there and I'm like, well, I'm sure this must be a rogue protester. I'm sure the other protesters would want to remove them, because I don't really see how there seems to be some very obvious congruence there. And then I walked away, I worked back, and the same person was still there waving his flag. And I was like, wait, is this Israeli protester part of the Iranian protesters? This doesn't make any sense to me.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, Iran has been absolutely hammered by not only Israeli interference, but actual violence, like deadly military strikes. They've been destabilized, they've been overthrown. Like, it's all like roads lead back to Israel and the US through their deep state agencies. And the Iranians, who are obviously protesting against a regime that they don't like, are happy to get in bed with the Israelis on this one. It's absolutely mental. But I guess
right. So you don't think what I saw was an anomaly? Like it?
No, I think the people that are out of Iran are out because they don't like the Islamic Republic. I think that is quite clear.
Yeah.
And Israel, as it stands, like America and the Trump regime, like you'd be just as likely to find someone like with a MAGA hat on at one of those rallies. Like, right. Israel and the US, the Trump administration represent an antithetical current to the Islamic Republic. And so, like, if they're, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So, more than happy, I think, for them to be like, yeah, let the Israeli guy come and wave his flag. It's the Israelis that are probably going to help topple the government anyway, which is what we want. So, right. It's strange bedfellows, but, again, they probably have a common objective at this point in time. Until they get their country back and Israel and the US continue to interfere, then they'll be enemies again. But, for this time, they're anti-Islamic Republic. And so, it is weird, though, isn't it? It's absolutely strange. It's absolutely strange to see. And, very, very shocking. Now, I don't know if, how this plays out, but it's surprisingly today, as we saw in the stream, was Donald Trump made a strange admission today when asked as part of another political agenda item that he was addressing. He was asked off the cuff by a reporter and said, well, what's going on with Iran? And he said, oh, they've actually stopped the killing. And so, like, I'm happy about that. And he multiple times mentioned, look, they've stopped the killing. They've stopped the killing. And, like, his pretense so far for invading Iran or striking Iran or interfering in Iran's internal affairs has been like, they're killing their people. These are human rights abuses that the Americans just cannot stand, kind of thing. And, like, he openly said it, like, 3 times in a row. It's like, they've stopped the killing.
Yeah,
and it's almost like Trump saying, look, I said that I wanted to strike them for this reason, but if they've stopped, then I'm cool, G. We're good, G, like, kind of thing. That was weird. That was really weird. So I wonder what's going on there, but only time will tell. That's why it's so hard to predict this stuff for us. Like, no one saw Venezuela coming.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't know anyone that called that.
Well, like, let's be completely honest. To use a dodgeball reference, that's a bold move, cut. Let's see how that pans out. It's such a ballsy move that people didn't expect. Like, I guess up until that point, everyone knows about the bluster of Trump, but like, no one anticipated for him to go up against the rules-based order. And like, I guess that goes to the whole Greenland situation. People are looking at what happened at Venezuela and all the reports of like, man, we saw them coming, and then they used those sound cannons, and like, we just couldn't handle it. Like, half of my Venezuelan guards fell down and they were crying in agony. I couldn't do anything.
That was mental, wasn't it? That was mental, that description.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, we couldn't do anything about it. And like, it's a good deterrent for anyone going up against you, because now Greenland's like, the king doesn't wants you to step away. Like, we watched today in stream the press conference with what was it, the minister for Greenland, and then what, the foreign minister of Denmark?
Yeah, some type of, they were like representatives of Denmark and Greenland specifically, who went over to speak to Marco Rubio and JD Vance to speak about the Greenland question, let's call it.
And they looked genuinely terrified. They looked like, actually, to be completely honest, they looked like somebody for the last 2 hours had been holding a gun to their head.
Yeah, they looked rattled. The guy looked rattled, and the woman looked like she'd seen a ghost.
Yeah.
Like, they came out of that meeting, like, we're jumping topics around all over the place, so just follow us here, please. Like, Greenland, if you're not aware, Greenland, like, America is trying hard to convince the world, I think, not just Denmark and not just the people of Greenland, convince the world that they should have Greenland. Just like that. I think that's the simplest way. They should just have it. So, like, what that means, whatever process gets them from wanting to have it to actually owning it under their title, as Donald Trump has said, it doesn't really matter. But, like, it's theirs. And, like, everybody in the world needs to come to terms with that. And they're convincing the world of that necessity. And so, like, we saw today, we watched the press conference debrief after the vice president and the secretary of state from the US, Marco Rubio and JD Vance, met with these 2 Danish and Greenlandic officials. And they did look like they'd just been through war themselves, those 2. They looked shell-shocked for us, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. And to be completely honest, this probably brings you to the second part of my question. Since we're talking about possible targets for annexing another country, who do you think, if there is going to be a next on the chopping block, who do you think is going to be on the chopping block?
Right. Yeah. Well, look, I think at the moment, it would seem that Greenland kind of makes sense. Like America could easily take Canada if they wanted to. But I don't think it's necessary. As in, like, Canada should just come to the party because it makes sense for Canada, if you know what I mean. Like, they should do it or we'll break your legs kind of thing. Mexico, same thing. Mexico and the US are tied together not only economically, but geographically. They're basically the same thing, really, the US and Mexico. They share the same landmass for the most part. And, like, Mexico ain't going nowhere. So, like, they're kind of covered. But Greenland, it is kind of in no man's land. It's, like, close to Canada, but, like, its sovereign ties are to Denmark and thus the European Union and NATO. And so, like, it's a European NATO member. And so it's kind of in this, it's in this no man's land. And so, like, it puts it up for grabs more, which is, I think, what the push is behind the attention on Greenland. Like, we were covering this a year ago when they first started speaking about Greenland. And, like, lo and behold, it's come up. I think it's come up on, like, in conversation again, not just because Trump and the administration is bringing it up again, but people have just witnessed what's happened with Venezuela. And Venezuela was basically struck in quite an arbitrary fashion.
Yeah.
And it escalated very, very quickly. Like, you know, one day it was kind of, we're sending a fleet into the Caribbean to intercept ships with 4,000 Marines. You know, the next week they're blockading basically Venezuela. And then they start shooting Venezuelan vessels out of the water like fish in a barrel. They're doing that for weeks. And then the next thing you know, they've swooped in and taken their leader away, kidnapped a leader, struck multiple locations, caused a nationwide blackout and killed 100 people. And then next minute, Maduro's, you know, walking into a federal courthouse in New York, like, you know, within hours. And so, like, in the face of such rapid, arbitrary, and unpredictable military force by the US, I think people are actually taking Greenland seriously now. Because, like, really, anytime the US or the current administration, if nothing else, feels like they need to protect some American interests, anything goes, potentially. Like, anything goes. Yeah. So I think Greenland actually makes a little bit more sense because Greenland, like I said, it's in no man's land at the moment. Like, I know they don't see that like that for themselves, but it kind of is.
Yeah, I guess people are talking, covering the talking points, like at least the geopolitical talking points that are relevant to 2026, but another set of talking points that are really important is, the stuff that you covered like a year ago, which is, it's not just, I guess, the American state that is concerned with Greenland. The other set of people that are interested in it are those that want to create a network state. It's the tech bros. It's the AI capitalists. They want to create the next Prospera. They want to create the next Praxis.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
And that's like another aspect where people are like, oh, I wonder why everyone's suddenly investing in Greenland. It's because they want to make it a libertarian paradise.
Yeah. There's a big part of this push for Greenland is actually being supported heavily by the billionaire class in the US, but particularly the billionaire class that you would say is associated with Silicon Valley. So I know this seems to be a contentious term for some people. They don't like it. They think it's offensive, but they're the tech bros. The tech bros. Your Jeff Bezoses of the world, your Peter Thiels, Mark Andreessens, Sam Altmans, Elon Musks. They have an interest in Greenland. They want Greenland. Now, they've said that it's for mineral purposes. They want access to the rare earths, the minerals that are in Greenland, under the tundra, under the ice, etc., etc. They want access to that. They think it's important. And like, there are other benefits to Greenland as well, being a massive location, like surrounded plenty of water, pretty access to water, cold great for a few data centers, if you know what I mean. But like, there's another point to it as well. It's literally an isolated site, and it's a very pristine environment. And yes, like you said, there's some tech bros out there with some big aspirations about creating these things, these libertarian cities, for lack of a better term, that are part of this idea called network state. Very briefly, the network state is this idea that if you want to create a society of your own, a city of your own, let's say, that is outside of the reach of some state and its regulations. This is a very kind of libertarian idea from a very business sense. If you want to get away basically from your business being regulated, and you being taxed, create your own sovereign entity. So the network state exists online. People come together, they invest in an idea, then they turn it into reality. They start buying property, putting things together, and then they actually leave the digital realm and set up shops somewhere in the physical realm. There's an example of this that already exists, a place called Prospera, I'm pretty sure, in Honduras, where they've already set up a network state, a libertarian city. And like they petitioned the Honduran government and said, look, we want this island, we want to build our little libertarian city paradise here. And we want sovereignty. And like for the right price, the Honduran government gave them sovereignty. And so like they have basically a sovereign state within Honduras, where these billionaires and multi-millionaires hang out in like penthouses and like incredible villa homes and live in absolute luxury. They set up their businesses. They're probably tax havens, all supported by an underclass of native Hondurans who do all of the menial work that these rich folk won't do. But like they want to set something like, they've talked about setting up one of these in Greenland.
Yes.
And like, you know, pioneered by Peter Thiel.
Yeah, and this kind of like turns to one of my major criticisms of the network state is that, okay, you've created your libertarian paradise and all of that, but what exactly happens in your paradise that you have no taxes, you don't have a traditional state, where another traditional sovereign state comes here and was like, oh, that's a nice little piece of sovereign land. How about I just take that from you? Because that's the thing. You have no military. You have none of the advantages of what a sovereign state has. However, I guess Greenland, in a network state, Prospera version, that they don't have to worry about that because it would have been annexed by the US, and I'm assuming what would happen is it would have the backing of the US or any future presidents. So it doesn't fall into any of the traps that any other network states expose themselves to.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's part of the fantasy and the stupidity of this idea of these libertarian cities, this network state idea. It kind of is only based upon the assumption that not only is there some type of rules-based order across the world that holds everyone at peace, but it kind of assumes that like there won't be anyone out there that might have a contrary or an oppositional position and want to take their territory from them. And so like, you know, they basically exist in a fantasy land because when they set these things up, they have two options. They can set up a new state somewhere else and like build it from scratch, or they can try and take over from within an existing state. And then they've got the protection of that existing state. So like there's talk of these freedom cities that Trump supports within America. These are network state libertarian cities. And obviously they have the full protection of the US state machine. And the same, like you've said, the same thing would happen with Greenland. You'd have a bunch of tech bro billionaires that get to live in their private glass city after America takes over Greenland for its strategic interests, and they have full protection of the American armed forces, just in case anyone tries to go around with their little libertarian paradise. It's just built on complete fantasy. They honestly believe that like they can have this little private existence which is completely unregulated, and so it exists without the state. And this is part of just the broader libertarian fantasy. The state is just some oppressive force that just bears down on my interests as a private individual and just picks up my economy, and saps my value from the economy. But like, you know, they fully need the state in order to exist, because it just takes, you know, let's just say, you know, let's pick the usual evil adversary, like Russia or China, just be like, that's nice, I'll take that, please. Like, and like nothing would stop them. Like they live in a complete fantasy world if they think that they don't need the usual functions of a state, the bare minimum, the bare necessities, which is like some type of stability in order to have a market system. And states provide that because they provide marketplaces that have some type of acceptable boundaries, like, you know, minimum health standards, minimum safety standards, minimum work standards, to make sure that everybody can function at a certain standard which upholds the market. And so like there are standards and regulations that are required just to make sure society functions like at a baseline which is acceptable. And somebody needs to protect your ass, your rich ass, while you're sitting in fantasy libertarian city. Someone needs to make sure that like nobody else is with you. And like they just like, if they don't take it for granted, they're like fully in fantasy world. They're fully in fantasy world.
Yeah, well, see, the thing is, you mentioned Peter Thiel before, and that's the funny thing, because Peter Thiel is the person who, you know, was the first backer of Trump, and you know he's very much involved in this potential Greenland network state if that eventually comes to fruition. And really, I guess I used the term like when I was saying, oh well, things are probably different with the Greenland network state if it ends up happening. I guess I was kind of saying it in a facetious manner, because really, for the potential Greenland network state, they just need the rule-based order to work for it, regardless of whether it works for anyone else. Because they can be like, okay, Russia, okay, China, you can try and take us over, but then since I'm Peter Thiel and I have the personal phone of Trump or Vance or whoever the next POTUS is, I'll just call them and you're screwed too. So like almost like a mutual assured destruction button. You know, they just have to have the rule-based order for that network state, and they don't care about anything else at all. And like, you know, to the extent that these people are also contributing to the degradation of the states that they rely on to exist and to have these libertarian city-state fantasies. Like they are fully kind of neoliberal in their outlook when it comes to government spending, for instance. And so like they're more than happy to make sure that government spending is at an absolute minimum. So there's no services for the population, almost completely eroded. No spending on infrastructure or any of the things that build a nation or keep it prosperous. So rich people can kind of elevate themselves on that basic structure. Like they're fully across completely pillaging their home societies, and like they don't see any problem with that. They don't see any problem with that sort of stuff at all. And like without that state structure behind them, without a population that can defend them, without a population that creates value for them to live off and create their network cities around, like they're adding to the destruction of their own societies. And it's crazy for them to think that this isn't going to have some other consequence
And but like these are also the people for IS that have all of these have constructed all of these basically like doomsday bunkers in New Zealand of all places. And so like I think they're hedging their bets. Like they understand that they're helping kind of end the American empire. At the same time, if it hangs around for long enough and protects their network state cities, they're happy. But if it doesn't, then they're off to their doomsday bunkers in New Zealand to wait out the nuclear winter. Like these guys are ready for the complete destruction of the human race. And so like, you know, when it comes to something like, you know, whether America takes over Greenland, for these types of people, it's a drop in the ocean. They don't give a shit. They don't care about the implications for other people, for the rest of humanity, especially if they really have such little faith in society at large, in the world, basically. They're literally ready for the end of the world. And so like if they can make a few bucks while it goes down, they're more than happy to do stuff like this. And I just think that this is an angle on the Greenland conversation that nobody really is aware of or talks about. Like it's all just been about, hey, they've got lots of minerals, right? Like kind of thing. And like, and then people that are outside the mineral discussion about Greenland are just like, oh, I don't know, man. Those Chinese and those Russians, they're pretty damn evil. Wouldn't you want the Americans to have it just to stop the Chinese and the Russians from getting it? And you're like, do you listen to yourself? like, is that your justification?
Well, there's that. And then the other talking point is, well, wait, if they take over Greenland, does that mean that's the end of NATO? And what does the end of NATO even mean? Like, are people going to pick sides? Like, what's going on? And
yeah, we had an interesting discussion about this recently, right? Like, who's going to pick what sides? Who's going to go where?
Yeah, like Canada makes sense. I think you made the bold claim that you reckon that UK will side with the US.
Well, like I don't know, like what we're talking about.
Or was that somebody else? I couldn't remember.
No, that was me. But like, you know, I'm still.
That was you.
I'm obviously speculating here, but like, let's just think about this. If people aren't aware, Greenland is under, like, let's say the protectorate is a protectorate of the Kingdom of Denmark, or the nation state of Denmark, and so like it's semi-autonomous. So really, it's part of Denmark. You could say Greenland, and Denmark is a NATO ally. It's part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which covers Canada and the US. They're part of the North Atlantic as well. Now, NATO obviously was started originally to contain the Soviet threat. Like it was to stop the spread of communism westward throughout Europe. And so like NATO and the allies like came together and they all agreed that they will protect each other from any problem. And so like if anyone with anyone in NATO, they'd all be down on their asses together as one big unit. Big happy family. Now what we got here is America, who's a member of NATO, threatening another. Like they've never actually conceptualized this. They never thought the threat to NATO would come from within NATO, and not just like, you know, I don't know, Finland, like Norway, and Denmark duking it out because they've got some fucking differences to settle from, you know, for over the last few hundred years or something like that. We're talking about the US, who are supposed to be the commanders in chief of NATO, picking a fight with Denmark here. And so like if America does something of this nature and like threatens Denmark and then like violates the actual like objective, like the meaning of NATO itself, undermines the idea of NATO itself, people are going to have to start picking sides. And so like we watched a simulation today which considered what would happen to the US and whether they have the ability to militarily take Greenland in the face of the rest of NATO opposing the US militarily, because Arctic warfare is very different to this type of warfare that the Americans are used to in like warmer climates, basically anywhere else in the world. And so, like
Yeah,
most
yeah,
NATO
yeah.
members, or a lot of NATO, is actually geared more towards Arctic warfare than the US is, and they're better prepared for it. But that's under the assumption that everyone else in NATO binds together against the US. Canada's not going to do that. Canada's not going to be like,
Yeah.
sorry, US, we stand with Denmark. Like, it's not happening. Like, it's not happening.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
too close to the US. It's not in their interest. Now, the trillion-dollar question for me is, what about the UK? Does the UK stand with all of those, those continental Europeans, those douchebags, or do we stick with the Anglosphere? All right, like kind of thing. Like, do they stick with America? Like, look at the current state of world affairs. Look at AUKUS.
Yeah, to be fair, somebody did make the comment that Brexit kind of sealed that deal of
Yeah, that
the
conversation's
UK
done.
going over. Yeah, yeah, like would side with the US, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, you got a good point there. So yeah,
It's a fair point. Like, I don't know. And like, if the US does have Canada and the UK and it's rest of NATO and they're both fighting over Greenland, that changes the game significantly. Significantly, if you asked me, before I asked. That's a game changer. Because then, like, America has its cake and can eat it. Like, it gets what it wants. It gets strategic control over Greenland, so it can have access to the northern sea route that Russia and China are going to start using. So it has a strategic position right there to exploit access to that northern sea route and China and Russia up if it needs to. But then it has like a Hawaii almost in the North Atlantic on the European side in the British Isles. Like, it has, if it has the UK, then like it's got like an aircraft carrier from which it can launch into Europe if it needs. It's like right there. That's what Hawaii basically is in the Pacific, right? It's an aircraft carrier. Or it's a refueling station in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's strategically so important. So important. And like it'll not just get Greenland, it'll get both if NATO like splits up and like along those lines. Now, this is all a massive assumption because like honestly though, for AS, if push comes to shove and the Americans are just like, hey, we want Greenland, I don't see the Europeans, including the UK, having the testicular fortitude to actually stand up to the Americans and say, no, we're breaking up NATO. They'll just be like, well, you know what? We never liked Denmark anyway. Like kind of thing. And then they'll just stick with the Americans and they'll be like, Denmark, you don't like it? Then get out of NATO because we're all sticking with the Americans. That's how I see it unfolding for us.
Yeah, like that would make a lot of sense. Like, yeah, it would. Look, massive cojones if Denmark comes back and is like, you know what, fuck you, America. Like it would be like holy shit.
Yeah,
like everyone here in Australia has their popcorn. It's like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, 100%. But like, I don't see the Europeans being like, just for the sake of Denmark or just for the sake of Greenland, let's say, being like, let's take the Americans on. They're too scared about what's happening at the moment in the Ukraine. The European existential threat of the 21st century is Russia.
Yeah.
Before it was something else. It was like, evil communism. But like nobody really believed that, I reckon. Like the Europeans, like most of them still had communists in their ranks and files. The French have a communist party. They were just doing that because like they needed the Americans, and they needed them economically as much as they needed them physically, but more so economically after World War II. They needed American money to rebuild Europe, and they got it. So like if America said, hey, we're anti-communist now, they're like, fine, we're anti-communist. But like now, I think they really are scared of Russia. They're terrified of Russia. And so like I think they're more terrified of Russia than the Americans, in the sense that like they want to stay with the Americans because they believe they need a big bad protector. from evil Russia kind of thing. And like they'll sacrifice Greenland to keep it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point because honestly, if in what I just said, if NATO were to say "up yours, America," yeah, I guess Putin would be rubbing his hands, right? Because it'd be like, "Great, war on two fronts. This is perfect for us."
He'd be cheering, but like I've said it before, and I stand by this. I think like ultimately on the world stage, if Putin really wanted to stick it to the American empire, and there was a split, and NATO split away, and let's say Europe split away from the US, it would actually be beneficial not for Russia and Europe to continue fighting, but it'd be so advantageous for the first time in history, let's say, for Europe to unite. Like if Russia was able to come together almost with Europe, and they were all able to be one unit, like the new EU would now actually include Russia, and you dissolve NATO, then America wouldn't have a chance. Like America would still be able to be king of its domain in the Western Hemisphere, Monroe Doctrine all the way. But like Europe would be able to actually survive, we're talking about, and prosper even. If you had the productive capacity of like Russia and like, you know, fuse that with European capital, like, you know, they could rebuild Europe without American interference. And like, that's what I see. Like if NATO really, if somehow the Europeans develop a spine and tell the Americans over Greenland and we stick with Denmark, and then we're able to turn around to Russia and say, look, we've got our differences, but like, let's settle over Ukraine, and let's come together with some type of security guarantee where we protect each other in the face of like American interference, or even some interference from like China or something like that, or India or the Arab nations, like whatever. If they became a unified Europe, inclusive of Russia, then like all their problems would go away. But like, I don't see anyone that has that vision.
So, see, that would be an interesting alternate reality, right? Like, I guess what I'm referring to is instead of giving up Denmark, there's like, I guess like a House of Cards-esque, like, wheeling and dealing where somebody representing NATO goes to Putin and Russia and says, you know what, you have Ukraine. You can have them as long as you ally with us, and you know, we have a NATO-esque alliance against the US. That would be super interesting.
That would rewrite the global order, because the US wouldn't be able to actually just be this be the world police, let's say, the top dog that actually gets to tell everyone what to do. The world would be multipolar in that circumstance. You would have the Europeans, the Chinese, and the Americans that are dictating world affairs, and they'd all have their own interests, and they would balance each other out. What would actually happen, I presume, would be actually a coming together then of Asia and Europe, and that would really fucking threaten American power. And they'd actually have to start playing diplomatic ball. They'd actually have to start doing some diplomacy, as opposed to the gunboat style of diplomacy that we've seen very, very recently, and seems to be the trajectory of world affairs right now. Like, that would really rewrite human history potentially for it.
Yeah, actually, no, I didn't think about that, because then BRICS would come into play, right?
BRICS would come into play
in that scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
BRICS would come into actual play. So a portion of South America would open up to world trade, if the Americans were able to allow that. like they probably want to take full control over the Western Hemisphere. So maybe BRICS, as in Brazil, would be out of the picture there. But you still have Russia, India, and China. You still, they'll be a force right there. So like if Europe now equals Russia inclusive, and you have India and China, all kind of working together in terms of diplomacy and at least trade. Like, if Europe and China just dealt with each other without any American interference, like that'd be an absolute game changer. But the Europeans have to have the ability to be able to say no to the Americans and yes to a unified Europe. They have to put their differences aside when it comes to Russia and try to seek some type of a deal, like in the true Trumpian fashion. Just seek a deal. Figure it out. You don't have to give up the whole of Ukraine. The Ukraine doesn't have to be a bargaining chip. It's settle on it. Settle on it without American interference. The whole thing that we've seen so far throughout the entirety of 2025, when it comes to Trump's vision for the Ukraine, is Trump's vision for the Ukraine. Like, he doesn't give a shit about Ukraine and Europe. It's just like whatever Trump feels like at the time. Like one day he's saying the Ukraine could win. The next day he's saying the Ukraine's completely and they need America. And like, we're just going to give it all up to Russia because I'm sick of this war now. You can actually see it in Trump's face. Like, he's sick of talking about the Ukraine. He doesn't give a shit. But technically, Trump shouldn't have anything to do with really Ukraine. That should be a European affair. Ukraine and Russia should be dealing with it, and Europe should be mediating, not Trump. Yeah. And so, like, if they could understand that, and if this happens because America forces their hand over Greenland, and like they somehow, like I say, develop a backbone for IS, and they're just like, you know what? Actually, we do stand with Denmark. Like we saw all that, insufferable bullshit on social media when the Ukraine war started up, and everyone's like, I stand with Ukraine. You're like, you don't even know what's going on. Calm down. You just like the blue and yellow as a filter. If everyone stands with Denmark on this one and Europe pulls away, they might actually be able to change the course of history on this one. Like, this could, like, gambling on Greenland could be a detrimental move for the Americans. Could be, if they don't play it well, if they don't maintain control over the Europeans. Because, like, the Europeans are subservient to the Americans at the moment. But, like, if they start to remember who you are, like, they have some like soul searching event and remember who they were before World War II. Like, that's a game changer right there. And that'll be the world that the Americans have been fearing, a multipolar world. Everything they're doing right now is to maintain their complete hegemony over the world and the world economy. Everything that they're doing right now. That could be a game changer.
Right, yeah, but I guess maybe that ties into the bluster though of Trump, right? Because as you say, like, one day he's all for Ukraine, the next day he wants there to be a deal to happen. One day he's talking about annexing Greenland, the next day he's talking about annexing Cuba, the next day he's talking about annexing Canada. Like, that's the whole game plan, right? It's like, well, you don't know what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
So
where's it coming? Yeah, Canada, 51st state. It's coming. It's coming. But Greenland first. Mexico too. There'll be it won't be whole, but I think they will extend Texas into Mexico, into northern Mexico, and they'll take parts that they see necessary. They'll, under the guise, just like the Maduro thing, under the guise of there's cartels there, which are now classified as foreign narco-terrorist organizations. They made that classification change to justify them going to other sovereign territories and exerting their will, like what we saw with Venezuela. They actually created that classification not for Maduro. That was actually helpful, but they did it first and started trialing it with the Mexicans. And just last week, Trump was caught threatening Mexico again. And Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, shut it down. She said again, like she did last year, she was like, we don't mind you coming to help us with the cartels. They are a problem, but they are our problem and we're in charge. So if you want to send resources, send the resources, but we're in charge. And so she shut it down again. Yeah. But like Trump also was doing this last year with Greenland, and they were kind of, everyone was laughing it off. But then like here we are now talking about it very seriously. So like, yeah, Mexico is not clear here. And I do reckon that there'll be some form of action on the cartels in Mexico. And that might include annexing parts of Mexico, if you know what I mean.
Right. Well, I guess on that note, we'll move to our very last segment. So, as you know, Mystery, what's that synthwave art? So what do you think the prompt for this one was?
This is Trump, the 80s guy, immortalized forever in some lame 80s artwork that is somewhere in Trump Tower. That was it. Bang on, wasn't it, for us?
Okay, so the prompt for this one was 80s Trump taking over a sphere of influence to be a power figure in the 21st century.
A sphere of influence. I see. And not only is he within the sphere of influence, he's holding a sphere of influence. Hey, you know what that is that he's holding for us?
What?
It's a Palantir.
What? Very, very good, very good. Yeah. So he's holding the network state in his hands.
Yeah, that's right. You can see Peter Thiel inside the orb if you look hard enough.
He's like, let me out. Let me out.
Oh my God. No. Oh my God. Alex Karp, where are you?
Okay. And with that, thank you everyone for tuning in today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And remember to keep thinking and keep learning. And to sign us off, I'll give it to you, Mystery.
Thank you very much for us. And to all of you out there, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.